everybody. Good afternoon and happy Monday. I'm so happy to be here today in the broadcast. We haven't been on here for a while, so I'm super excited about this and about our special guest today. We have Kyle Dean Houston. Hi, Kyle. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing fantastic, Naomi. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, no, I'm so excited about this and about our conversation today because it's a really important talk. So, you know what we do? We usually put our guests on the hot seat. So, Kyle, I'm going to put you on the hot seat today.
I wasn't ready for that, but let's do this.
Alrighty. So since we're talking about parenting and relationships and everything, let's talk about you a little bit before we get into that. Let's talk about your youth. What do you think was your biggest challenge when you were growing up? Your biggest struggle?
Yeah, no, I understand the question. So I will tell you that it's really hard for me to pinpoint just one.
Right.
But there's two things that are difficult with this answer. One is pinpointing just one, and the other
Really?
one is I'm so loyal to my parents that it's difficult for me to talk bad about them. But here we go. So
Sorry,
I
mom.
would I'm sorry, Mom. That's right. No, hey, look, I realize that everybody's doing the best they can, but back then, one of my biggest challenges, once I got to be about 13 or 14 years old, was my mother was very dominating. She had this idea of the way kids were supposed to act, the way they were supposed to be. And this was something that was passed on from her parents, but
Yep.
she tried to get me to fit into this box nicely. And I'm very stubborn, and it just didn't work out in the relationship whatsoever. I loved her. She loved me, of course, but there was so many misunderstandings, so many fights, so much wasted energy, so much rebellion that came from trying to be forced to be like my sister or another kid or things like that. And that translated in something that felt like I wasn't worth being loved as I was.
Yeah.
So that was very, very challenging and much more apparent to me now than, of course, it was back then. Back then, it just felt like, oh, we're in a fight. This I'm supposed to show up for this fight, and this is how I was trained to do it. But now I see it as just two people misunderstanding one another, coming at a situation completely wrong.
Yeah. No, it's
So
absolutely true. It's true because sometimes, like you said, it's passed down by generations. It's kind of like what I consider karma is because it's passed down a family line. And, nobody really ever teaches us. Like, there's no manual for parenting. When you have a baby, no one comes and says, here's your manual. Here's how you, take care of a baby and how you raise a child. And here are your life skills. No one teaches us. So, it gets passed down and it's hard. And sometimes they do it with the best intention, but what we're seeing now and what therapists and everyone notices is that it does affect you because as a child you think, I'm not being accepted. I'm not being accepted for who I am. And so that's where all the problems happen. And so how did you handle that personally? Like, how did that affect you, like, in your life?
so part of the way I handled it, we just talked about lots of fights, lots of rebellion, anything that seemed like I don't want to say anything, but a lot of things that seemed like they were wrong or went against this stereotypical benchmark that I was supposed to be like, I would do in spite of them. I would drink, I would smoke pot, I would do all sorts of things that were against what they wanted for that reason. So that's how I managed it, right? Was to create chaos inside the house. How it affected me
Yeah.
is something I still work on every single day, right? I mean, I don't want to pretend that I'm not a hot mess, but I'm not one of those people that is incapable of functioning, right? And I
Right.
don't go to a lot of therapy and do those sorts of things, but I'm still looking at, specifically in the context of the way I raise my children, the detriment or the after effects of living a life like that or being raised like that. I mean, here's the crazy thing: what we can't stand the most about our childhood, what we can't stand the most about our parents, the minute we get mad seems to come out. Like,
Isn't
and it's crazy, isn't it? So I
Yeah.
catch myself doing it with my kids now. I
Yeah.
catch myself saying, you have to do it because I said so. And then I apologize and I make sure I backpedal. So in one sense, it it caused a lot of self-worth issues growing up that every kid has. But
Yeah.
in another sense, it's made me a much better parent because I despise that kind of parenting.
Right.
So good and bad happened for sure.
Yeah, no, but what you said is 100% true. It's 100% true. Um, now,
Yeah, normally I lie, but I think that was true. Yeah. So I'm glad.
no, but it's so funny because as kids we already have problems with self-esteem and everything. So it's so hard. And when it came to the rebelling, like, how was that? Did you manage okay, or did consequences come out of this? Like, did it make things harder for you, or were you able to get by?
So, of course, it made it harder, right? Lucky for me, I was not only good at sports, but I liked them. Lucky for me, I liked the attention that I got in football and wrestling and track and all of those things. And that was a very, very good management tool for me. I wanted to make my coaches happy. I wanted to do what was right on the field. I was all about teamwork. I was all about hard work, discipline, all of those things were taught to me outside the house. But
Yeah.
when we got home, oh my goodness, especially when I was 15, 16 years old. I mean, to your point earlier, kids in general are trying to, I mean, we've spent our entire life, I say we, kids have spent their entire lives trying to figure out what are the rules? How does the universe work? Where's my place in this? Who loves me? What's right? What's wrong? And why is all this hypocrisy, around me? So I was going through that at the same time where I was putting my foot down and saying, no, I am not going to be the person that you say I'm going to be. I'm going to be the person that I, unbeknownst to me, need to be inside me. Right. And I was trying to navigate through all of that. And the consequence of the way I acted was that it took a really, really long time to figure out who I was. I'm still working on it, Naomi. Uh-oh, I may have lost you. Are you there? So, Naomi, I'm not sure if you can hear me, but I certainly can't hear you.
Hello, I am so sorry I lost connection.
It's okay.
It's the funniest thing. It's been happening for the past month, and no, they've come by, but I can't get it seem to work. But
Well,
hopefully,
well,
hopefully it'll stay now. What you were like talking to yourself?
well, I was talking to myself, but then I was just a guy with, sitting here looking at a camera, and I was trying to think, wow, what should I say until she comes back?
Oh
And I
my
came up
God,
with nothing. So I should have said a joke, right? I
you
don't know
did
any
a good
clean
job.
ones.
Oh, it's okay. We'll bleep it out after the live, right?
Okay. Well, here
Um,
we are. So
yeah,
I think the conclusion of your question was that we there was a lot of heartache. There were a lot of um, there was a lot of trauma because of the way I decided I was going to be, but certainly it prolonged this search for my place in the universe and who I am, which I'm still working on.
isn't that funny? Yeah,
It's
it's
funny
that
because we all do it, or it's funny because
it's funny because sometimes, yeah, we have it's the hardest thing, finding our place in life. It's crazy, but we go through the journey, and sometimes, we don't even know what is the next step we're gonna take. And I just find it interesting how that is. I feel like it's just part of the journey. Like, figuring out this is like the biggest part of the entire journey in life, and finding the balance.
well, the only
It's
thing
it's
that
great.
we've all heard this before, but the only thing that you ever truly experience in life is yourself, right? You don't
Yeah.
really, like, I don't really experience Naomi. I experience Naomi in the context of me. So the only
Yeah.
thing you're ever going to change, the only thing that you're ever going to make better, the only thing that you're ever going to experience, good or bad, is you and your reactions to everything. So yeah, life is all
Absolutely.
about figuring out you.
Yeah, and I don't know if you've heard the saying about Rumi that says, "Today I'm not who I think I am. I'm not who you think I am. I am who I think you think I am." And it's
Right?
so true
Isn't that
because we live
horrible?
our life, yeah, right. We live our life based on perceptions, and what we think is the reality, how we interpret is basically our story. And what you were saying before is really important too, because you were saying how sometimes, in a certain situation, you come out and you're like behaving the same way that you don't want, or you didn't want to be treated. But that happens to us because, the way that we record our lives, the most indispensable, the most important years were those first 7 to 10 years of our lives. So whether or not, we picked up these traits, we picked up these patterns of behavior that now sometimes we play out and we don't even think we have in our system because consciously we don't want to be that way. But then we get triggered and it happens and it's just the craziest thing. It's crazy. But have you guys like talked about it now and about your relationship, like how it was in the past with your parents now and
Well, so the answer is kind of. So I mean, here's the thing. My mother is 74 years old,
Mhm.
and she's very set in her ways, and I love her,
Mhm.
right? So here's the best thing, the best gift I can give her is a forgiveness, right? Which
Yeah,
I'm not even sure that necessarily applies because I love her.
right.
But I give her the room that she never gave me. She doesn't have to fit in a box for me. She is
Exactly.
where she is, and she shows up where she shows up. And when she starts to rub me the wrong way, which is very easy to do, I have the right to leave because I'm an adult.
Exactly.
But for the most part, because of that, and because we've taken a lot of pressure off ourselves, we get along really, really well. And she's a lot of fun. She's a lot of fun. I mean, I don't want her pitted as the enemy of my
Oh
life,
no,
right?
not at all. Not at all.
But you know, if things would have gone a little bit uh, different, maybe she would be, right. she
Yeah.
she certainly had the opportunity to become that, but she
Mm.
didn't. Now my father, they both passed away,
Oh,
and we never got to have the really, really deep conversation about all the things that my stepfather taught me, and that one kind of stings a little bit. So
yeah.
the therapy that I went through was I wrote my book. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Yeah. And that's a good way to heal. But like you said, sometimes these things happen and we don't understand why they happen to us, but it has made you a better, deeper person in the process.
It certainly made me a better parent, that's for sure. I
And I'm
think I'm a
not,
better person, but I'm a
yeah,
great parent.
I know you are. I know you are. And I want to talk about your parenting now, because I know you're a dad, you have several children, and I know you're a great dad. So let's talk a little bit about, the relationship that you have with your children. And basically, what we wanted to discuss today was a little bit about how to face the challenges that you have at home. I mean, at this age, like you were saying, you experience the rebellion yourself. There's sometimes there's aggression. There's so much going on with each of us individually, and then when we come together, finding that space. So, what would you say has been like the biggest thing, like with you and your children, that you've had to like work on?
Well, for me, so I basically have two phases of parenting, right? And I think it's important for your audience to understand. I went to prison, right? And for most of my son's childhood, both of them, I was in prison. And Dylan, my oldest, who's 29 now, I got out when he was 13. And so he moved in with me when he was 14, and we started to develop our relationship then. That's a really, really difficult recipe for creating a bond. I just got out of 7 years of prison. I'm trying to create a name for myself, a career. I've got a teenager that's going through all sorts of things, and he and I love each other, but we've got our own issues, and we arrive in that moment with all of that stuff. So Dylan was kind of my test bed for all the things that I didn't want to do with
Yes.
my other children. And that's something that he and I will work on forever. But the one thing Dylan always knew was that he had a voice and that I loved him and that I was sorry for all the things that I had done and that I would do. That was the best I could do at that time. My two baby girls, who are 8 and 10, they get the best of any world they could ever imagine with me.
Right.
I made sure that we talk as, I don't want to say it's lateral because clearly I'm a 50-year-old man and they're young young ladies, but they know that they're seen. They know that they're important. They know that they have a voice in the conversation that we're having. And they know that I not only will listen to it, but I want to hear it. I love their opinions. I love to know how their mind works. And that's the conversation we have often. And I see, it's just so amazing. I see how their self esteem flourishes in a way that mine never could just because of that. And it seems tiny and it seems small, but when it's genuine, it's powerful to
Yeah.
give your kids that kind of rope.
It's always the simple things. It's not that it's something very difficult, but it's doing them and being consistent. But like you said, you make them feel seen. Would you say that the most important thing then, like for a parent to give a child, is basically, what is it? The time, the actual unconditional love of acceptance. Like, why do you think that they feel seen? What is it that you're doing that maybe might be different, that you're getting these good results?
I would say unequivocally, it is not time because time in itself is not enough. I got all kinds of time with my parents because they were punishing me and yelling at me and all sorts of
Okay.
things, right? So it is how you show up for them. And to me, the answer to everything in the universe, forget, children for just a second, the answer to every relationship, the answer to every problem is always unconditional love and understanding. And I would pull those two together because they work together perfectly. So now we'll apply this to raising children. If you can show up, and this is the toughest thing, unconditionally, right? With understanding and not try to make them mini me's, because that's where the problem starts to arise.
Yes.
Every single human being on the planet, possibly every single species, but every single human being on the planet is individual, right?
Yeah.
They're as individual as a snowflake or a thumbprint or whatever you want to say. And there's something truly deep and innate about all of us that wants to express that individuality. And when we're trying to make them something else and we're not allowing that to flourish, there's always going to be problems. There's
Always.
always going to be a conflict internally. So the best thing we can do as parents is show up with understanding, try to see where their passions are, where their interests are, where their talents are, their gifts. And when they're young, it's hard to see, but just try to find those things and foster them and encourage them. And something great will come out of that.
Yeah, it's true. I don't know if it's because sometimes, as a parent, you kind of want your child to do maybe what you couldn't do, or you want them to follow what you did. But yes, we tend to, just as a society, to always want to put things in a box. And that makes it so difficult because, like you said, I mean, we're all unique. There's not one person in the world that has your fingerprint. So that's how unique we are out of 7 billion people. So it's important to always keep that in mind, that we're all individual beings. We're all not going to grow the same. We all have different interests. And it's very important what you said, to take time and really figure out like what your kid really likes, what he wants, and then try to encourage that. Because the hardest thing is, like you said, look, we're all sometimes still trying to find our place in the world, even when we're happy in certain aspects of our lives or doing certain things. But that's the hardest thing, finding your place in the world. And when you don't feel comfortable in your own home, or you don't feel like you can be yourself, then that's where, every other problem starts. Do you think that that is a reason why kids a lot of times have problems? You know, some parents feel that their kids don't want to hang out with them, or, that their kid talks back. Is there something maybe subconscious that's going on that the parents doing that's getting this reaction, you think?
It's a tough one, right? I mean, this is a really, really complex situation, and because we just talked about everybody being individual, I I can't say that what I'm about to advise is a one size fits all,
Yeah.
right? Because there's all sorts of things. There's autism. There's there's genetics. There's all sorts of stuff that plays in to this equation. But for me, if you're a human being who is trying to learn how to express this innate piece of yourself, this individuality, and it's being suppressed by everything in your environment, why would you want to be around that? Right. So the parents that where their children don't want to be around them, that is very normal. And you've got to make them. I'll tell you right now, the best thing, I never saw this, but the best thing I did for my family is I bought an RV on a whim. And our even at this young age, they love screen time, right? They're always in front
Right.
of their iPads, always. Like if we would let them, they would do it all day long until they went to bed, and then they would pass out with it on their chest, right?
Yeah.
But when we get in the RV and we park wherever it's at, it could be 1 hour from the house. They never even remember that they have that iPad. They never even remember that TV exists, and they want to take walks with me and they want to do all these things. So my advice, and it becomes a lot more complex when they're 15, 16 years old, but put them in environments where they don't have a choice but to connect, right? And then create an environment where connection is easy. Kids want to be loved. Kids want rules. Kids want boundaries. They do want all those things. And I know it for a fact because when Dylan showed up at my house at 14 years old, he had no structure. And I could tell that he was just hungry for somebody to show him, you matter enough for me to give you structure. They want that, but they're also going to want to push back. So
Yes.
create boundaries, make sure that it's not said as punishment when they do wrong, but as the consequence of doing wrong. And make some of the consequence the fact that they may have to eat a meal one on one with you for a month, or something like that, where connection becomes possible. Here's the thing I want to say that's really, really important to me, and this would have helped me a lot. The opposite of addiction, and I didn't make this up, right? But the opposite of addiction is not recovery, it's not sobriety. The opposite of addiction is human connection. And if you can offer that where it's authentic, where it's real and it's honest, then I think addiction takes care of itself.
Yes. And I like what you said about discipline, because a lot of parents, I know this, and I had this from my parents too. They want to be your friend because they love you, so they want to be your friend, and then they don't put the stern boundaries. But it's true. I really believe that children do like boundaries, and they do need the discipline. It's a like fine. It's a balance between the nurturing, but the discipline, because they need it. I mean, these are the developing years. If as a parent we don't set the mark, if we don't give them something to base their life on, then how are they supposed to then do that in the real world? So that's a really good point.
And the thing that I have to constantly check myself on is, am I creating boundaries? Am I creating rules because of something I want? Right? And the answer needs to be no every time. This needs to be what's best for my child. This needs to be what's best for their development and their growth, and not what's best for the management of the house or the management of my life. And that's the challenge I have, right? But that's kind of the benchmark that you put in front of every decision you make, every rule that you put out there.
So that's interesting though. So how does that conversation go in your head? Like whenever you face like a dilemma or whenever there's a situation you want to make a decision, like how does that run in your head? What questions do you ask yourself? Because it seems like you're very, very balanced. I like it. Like
Oh, little do you know.
no,
So
you know what I mean? You work at it. It's good. It's
I do.
good.
It's important. It's very important. So look, here's the best thing for me. Making rules in the moment is horrible, right? Because now all of a sudden you've set something in motion that may not apply a day from now. Like maybe a joke at the table, maybe singing, who knows? I'm not that stern. Actually, I love singing at the table, but I'm just saying, maybe in the moment you want the kids to be quiet at the dinner table. You can't make that the rule all of a sudden, right? It can't be a surprise. So what I try to do is I try to create rules with my wife. I mean, this is a partnership in every stretch of the imagination, and we try to make rules that make sense in multiple scenarios. And then we keep ourselves, we're each other's accountability partners, because I could fly off the handle and make a new rule, and Jen, if she sees it, will tell me, now wait a minute. And we do have those conversations in front of them, and we're pliable. But the biggest part, and the answer to your question, is to make sure that the majority of rules are made in a moment of clarity and no anger, and before they've been broken.
Yes. Yes, right. It's
Because
kind of
then
yeah,
your kids are on eggshells, right? I mean,
exactly.
what do we do?
Exactly. Exactly. No, and it's so true. Like that should be a rule. Never do or respond or say anything when you're upset because it's like it doesn't come out well. But from what I'm getting, it seems that you guys do everything together.
Everything.
There's a lot of collaboration and a lot of teamwork. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, and what the girls see, and Dylan saw it too. I mean, look, I think this is important to say. My wife is not Dylan's mother, not his real mother, but
Right.
he considers her his mother. And even when he parachuted in the middle of our brand new family, we were a unified front no matter what. So for lack of better words, we're the people that decide what's best. The buck stops with us, and we're together on this. But we're also going to make sure that we police one another so that we're raising you in a consistent way. And that's what our kids see. For instance, the kids could come running in here tonight and decide all they want to do is watch TV and throw their shoes all over the place. And I could be having a bad moment and come in here and raise my voice. And Jen will take me to the side and say, hey, look, I should have gotten on to him. This isn't fair, blah, 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 blah. And they know that as soon as I go into the other room, chances are I'm going to come back with an apology or something like that. So it's not just you're at the whim of mommy and daddy. You are literally um, you're going to be exposed to emotions of mommy and daddy, but we're going to figure out what's right and wrong together, and we're going to come back and correct it. And we're also in this together. If mommy said no, so does daddy, right? And that never
Right.
wavers. And that's
Yeah.
important.
Yeah. There is important. Yeah, that is important. We've all been through that where you try to yank one when you know the other one's against. And it's like they'll take advantage of that totally. It's that age.
I'm the worst because I'll say yes to everything. I'll
Oh
say,
my
and
God.
my little girls are so great. I got to say this though. I'll say yes. They'll come in and I'm doing something and they'll say, can I get on the iPad? Yes. And then they're like, I better ask mommy because
And
my,
they're like, oh,
and then
oh,
they'll go, I know they police themselves. And that has nothing to do with me. That is
let me,
just the luck of the draw.
yeah, that's great. That's great. But let me ask you a question about that. Like,
Yep.
do you have a certain limit when it comes to social media? 'Cause I know that's a big thing too now, and I love it.
You know what? This is a conversation my wife and I are having consistently. So the answer is we will. But what has to happen before we do it? Because I'm big on hypocrisy or not being a hypocrite.
Right.
How can I tell them no FaceTime when daddy's always in front of a computer, a phone, or, something? And I work all the time.
Right.
So we have to get our house clean before we can start going into theirs. We have to make sure that we are consistently doing what we suggest they do. So anyway, the answer is we will, and we'll figure this thing out. And you've just prompted me to make it faster.
I love what you said, Kyle, because I think that a lot of parents don't realize that sometimes they tell us something, but really as children, we don't really hear, we see.
Right.
And so our example is the most important thing. If we're telling a kid, don't do this, but then they're seeing us do it, it's not only going to not work because they're not going to do it, but also they're going to look at us and be confused.
That's right.
So that's a really, really good point. Well, I'm really looking forward to hearing you talk on our Teen Warrior Summit, because you have great strategies that you have implemented and they have worked. And I know that everyone's going to get a lot of value from it. So I'm really looking forward to it. And I want to thank you so much for taking your time, because I know you're busy and coming on here live for us today. And I want to thank you guys so much for jumping on and watching. Randall, thank you so much for hopping on. It's so cool to see you again. And everybody else, we want to remind you guys that if you want, you could join our Be Your Own Superhero page, where we're all posting stuff continuously. We'll be posting information about the summit and also providing a lot of value and cool talks and topics that you guys will be interested in seeing. I guess that's it for now. We will see you guys again on Thursday. And until then, I hope you guys have a fantastic week. And remember to be legendary. Thank you so much, Kyle.
I love it.